Hello everyone. On today's episode we have on a very special guest, my great-grandmother, Vesta McGrady. Talk about your childhood and growing up and Papa and all that stuff.
Yeah, we, when I was born, we lived at Fancy Gap.
Yeah.
And we moved down here. My grandmother lived up the road here. She begged Dad to move down here. So we bought that old house down there, that farm.
Which road did you live on in Fancy Gap, if you can recall?
I don't even know. It was way off the road. And there was several neighbors, though. But I don't know, because we would turn there at the Stable Inn and go down through there and turn left.
Was it Old Snake Creek, or am I thinking of a different place?
I don't know. I don't know.
What did your father and mother do for a living?
Farmed.
Yeah.
Mom always lived on a farm. She was raised over at Fremont. Her dad used to be the Clint Webb store before Clinton bought it. Mm-hmm. And so she was raised over there. Yeah. She was John Alderman's sister. Had it hard after she had all them children. Mm-hmm. But she lived to be 98.
Yeah. And your father, was he from Hillsville?
Yes, he was from just next house up the road on the right. That old house about to fall down. Mm-hmm. That's where he was from.
So y'all ended up eventually down here at the farm, which is still owned, still in the family.
It's still.
You had a lot of brothers and sisters. Where did you rank in those? Were you towards the older ones, or were you younger ones?
I was the second child. I had an older brother. Then there was 8 more born after that. Yeah. There was 10 of us. It was kind of pitiful.
I'm sure that was more common back in that time too. Was there a lot of families around here of that size?
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't really know.
Yeah.
And but anyway, we had a good life anyway.
Yeah.
And I started school at Mine Branch, and that old school, and then we moved down here, and I went to Snake Creek School, and that's where my dad had went to school when he was growing up. So it was old.
They just, the Historical Society just released a big page of all the elementary schools in Carroll.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how many elementary schools there was. A very large amount. So what year were you born in?
Pardon?
What year were you born?
1934.
1934. That was the middle of the Great Depression. You were young during that time, but what can you recall of the Great?
Oh, well, we was raised on a farm. I didn't know we were hard up, because we had a nice house over there. It was a lot nicer than the one we had down here.
Yeah.
And Dad owned a farm over there, and he'd sold it and bought the farm down here. It was 100 acres, and he did a lot of work on the old house. The creek would get up, and we had a big foot log that went across, and that was what we had to get across on, because there wasn't any bridge or anything down there then.
Yeah. Looking, you mentioned the creek, and I remember you telling me one time about a flood. Wasn't there a big flood that came through one night, and everybody had to go up on the hill?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a big dam up the road here, up on a hill, and it had broke, and the water came through. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. They got us all up, and Dad carried us out, and he'd just had built a new toilet. And so we went up, stayed in the toilet. It wasn't raining, So we, had shelter till the flood went over, and it went over pretty quick.
Did it damage the house any, or?
No, but years ago, I had my aunt and uncle that were living down there, and it washed a hog away, and it went on down the creek to the next neighbor's house. That's where they found it. And it got halfway up the windows, the water did.
Wow.
And so they moved out.
Yeah.
They would, and we was stupid enough to move in.
I'll have to take you down there sometime, Ethan. It's really pretty. But there's a spring, and I remember when I was little, we used to get the spring water. How long has that spring been there? Was that something that was there when you were a little girl? Or?
Oh, it was there then. And my sisters, my niece, her husband had the water tested, and there's no bacteria, nothing. We didn't realize that we was drinking healthy water, and but it, the spring is still there.
So if you can think back to when you were growing up on the farm, can you go through a typical day of what it's like to live on a farm?
Well, we were always worked in the fields and raised cabbage and beans and corn, and as soon as you was big enough to hoe, you got to hoe and worked with everybody else. We had cattle, and the cows, we sold milk, and my dad built a cart, and we had to pull the cart with the milk cans to the road down here, out to the highway. It's highway now. It was at that time it was just a gravel road. When we was growing up.
Were there many cars in Carroll back then?
No, not many. There was a few, but not many. And the school bus did go through, and so, but we had to walk to school. We walked about 2 miles every day.
Down and back, or one way?
When we would, it was about 2 miles from the house.
Okay.
And then later on, they had 2 rooms, had pupils in 2 rooms. When I was there, it was all in one room, 1st through 7th grade.
So you were in 1st grade walking that distance to school?
Yes.
Wow, it's pretty young.
Were you by yourself, or was your
my brothers?
brother?
And some of the neighbors had children, and they walked with us. And Bill Whirl, that used to be the coach, he was raised this next house down here on the left.
Yeah.
And he was always there with their house, and he would come, and some of the neighbor boys and my brothers and all, they would sit and play cards all evening, and they had a good time.
Yeah.
Mom always said that she always cooked a lot. Oh goodness, 3 meals a day and a lot of food. And she said she never knew how many she was going to have for breakfast, that they'd keep rolling down from upstairs.
Who were some of your best friends growing up?
Betty Webb, she lived over on the the road to Red Hill. We would walk back and forth and spend weekends together. We could see her house from ours at that time, and she was one of my best friends, and she's still living too.
That's good.
And not many of us left.
This might be kind of hard to remember, but do you know your earliest memory, if you can think back to it?
The best one that I can remember, my dad took us and we went to Mount Airy to a fair, and they were shooting off firecrackers, and it like scared me to death, and I remember crying. I reckon it must have scared me so bad. I was kind of used to being up where it was quiet all the time.
How often did you go to Mount Airy?
Oh, we probably didn't go over I didn't, over 2 or 3 times a year. And Dad might have gone before then, I don't know, but we didn't have a car. And we finally, I was in high school when Dad got a pickup. We walked everywhere. We walked to church and walked to the stores. And Mom, she made butter, at home, and she'd send us to the store. We would take a pail of butter, and they would say, I don't know where they sold it at, but they bought it.
How often would y'all get into Hillsville when you were small? Go into town?
Not very often. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But Dad went a lot. But we wasn't used. We just a bunch of wild Indians, I guess.
Where'd you go to church?
Pleasant Grove.
Okay.
Up on the hill.
I got you.
Yeah. We had to walk everywhere, so.
Yeah, it's close.
Yeah, you went to the closest one. But where the schools, I went to Snake Creek, but there was Vincent School and Webb School, and some of those were almost closer, but we went where Dad went when he was growing up.
I know kids today, I know my sister, I'm sure Ethan you know, and I know too. It seems as time goes on, people get up later and later. I know it wasn't like that for y'all. What time would y'all usually get up when you were
5 o'clock in the morning. You got when Dad would yell for everybody to get up. Mom was already up and had breakfast ready, and we would get up and eat, and we'd go had cows to milk, and then we went to the field.
So you ended up having a huge family. Did y'all go on any trips together, or what did y'all do for fun in the summertime?
We played games at home. No, we didn't. We never went on vacation or anything.
I know you've mentioned before, but polio. Did you have any experience with that in Carroll?
Dad at that time wouldn't let us go into a movie theater or anywhere where there was a crowd. So we stayed at home. And that was the summer that I met Herbert. But we went on picnics, a lot of picnics, and we didn't go to the theaters. We didn't go. If we went swimming, we just was in the creek.
Yeah. You talked about meeting Papa Herbert. How old was you? How old was he? How did that come about?
I was 16 and he was probably 22 because he was in service.
Yeah.
And yeah, I met him on a double date, and he was raised just probably 3 miles down the creek, but I'd never seen him.
Was that after he came back from the war, or was that before?
No, he was in service. He was supposed to have gone to Korea, and he ended up he had appendicitis, and he had to have emergency surgery. He wouldn't tell anybody he was sick, and he got so bad that they had to operate on him, and so they'd sent him home on a 45-day leave to recuperate, and then he went to Texas, went to Fort Hood, and then went to Germany.
When did y'all get married?
We got married in 53, I guess.
That was after you came back?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. After he got out of service.
Did you two write each other when he was away? Did you write letters to
Oh, yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, he went back to... He left after I'd met him and went back, and he couldn't remember my name. He didn't know who to send a letter to. So he I don't know, he must have asked his brother.
Yeah.
And I think maybe they had a telephone at that time. We didn't have one.
Yeah.
I didn't have a telephone until I was... we were married and not living at the old house when he went to driving a truck, and he couldn't he had to have a phone because of so they could call him, and they wouldn't put in a telephone for us unless my dad got a phone too. They must have been hunting business.
That was always interesting. He's got the pictures from the war and when he was in Germany. Did he go to the Olympic Games?
Oh, yes, he went to the Olympics in Oslo or somewhere. Anyway, he got to go to it. He traveled a lot.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to ask you, too. I know a lot of your brothers served in the Army.
Yes, my oldest brother joined the Army, and he was in 4 years, and he got his discharge and came home, and there wasn't any jobs. So one of my other brothers, Elmo, he decided that he was going into service, so he joined the Air Force, and Olin couldn't stand it. He went with him, and he joined too, and Elmo had joined, and he was planning on traveling a lot, and he was sent to Oklahoma and stayed the whole time. And Olin traveled all over the world.
He lived in Okinawa for how long? It was years and years, wasn't it?
He was over there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was, and he really liked Germany.
Yeah.
He liked it.
Didn't he switch from the Air Force to the Army? He served in 2 branches, didn't he not?
That was, Olin was in the Army.
Yeah. I thought Olin switched between branches. I thought he served in 2 different branches.
Yeah, and then he joined the Air Force.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Coy was already in the Air Force. He had done joined. He was in England. That was where he met Jill.
Yeah.
And so...
Speaking of Jill, we interviewed her too, and we heard her experience in the war. What was it like during World War II in Carroll County?
Well, everything was rationed. Everything was rationed. You couldn't buy anything hardly. Shoes, I think 2 pair a year.
Wow.
And just sugar and everything was rationed. And the meats, but we was okay there because we had a farm and we grew our own meat.
Did your family buy any war bonds?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Some of my family bought them. I didn't. I was too young to have the books, and you could buy the stamps to go in them. But it was bad.
Yeah.
did you hear news from the front often? How did you get news about the war? I mean, was it often that you received
Well,
information?
we must have just heard from the neighbors because we had one old radio and a battery radio, and batteries run out so fast that we listened to the radio some, but not much.
Yeah. Let's kind of skip back to the future again. You got married in 1953. You were married. So can you start from there? Like what? So you got married. You moved out of your family's home.
Well, we had rented a place uptown, and then we decided that we wasn't going to do that. So we moved in with Mom and Dad till Herbert and his dad built a house.
And the house y'all built wasn't far from your
No,
home,
it was just out down on Webb Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it looks bad now.
Yeah. So you mentioned your father some. I've always heard that your dad was kind of a pseudo vet, so to speak. That he worked on animals and even people sometimes.
Oh yes, even after he passed away, people were calling and was wanting him to come and doctor cattle or something and work with them. And so, and then Olin did for a while, but he didn't long.
Yeah.
But Dad was one of the women that used to live near Fancy Gap. She fell and broke her leg, and she wanted Dad to fix the leg, and he told her he couldn't. And she said, "Oh yeah." I said, "You doctor cattle?" I said, "I know you can doctor my leg." So they put her upon a table, and he fixed her leg. And but that was awful.
Yeah.
But that people didn't have a way of going, and so you just did the best you could.
Do you ever remember when you got sick?
The first time I went to the doctor was to get a worker's permit to go to work when I was 16.
Where was that at? Where'd you work?
I was where I worked at Virginia Lee Hosier Mill. I worked there a year, and then I got married, and then later on we raised the kids. One of my aunts talked me into taking a nursing class, so I went into nursing. I was LPN, and I worked at the training center for 22 and a half years.
I've heard in the past that you were really sick when you were a baby. And you talked about that a little bit earlier. They didn't think that you would live when you were a baby. Can you talk about that a little bit? What did you have? How did they fix it?
Well, I was born at home, and I didn't weigh 5 pounds. They didn't know exactly, and the doctor didn't think I'd live. And he said that if it was in the hospital, they could save me. And Mom said, "Oh, we're going to save her." And but they worked with me, and I survived.
Yeah.
And 'cause my oldest brother, was just 16 months older than me, so then they had all the rest.
Yeah. Looking at how many siblings you had, I'm sure you had to help take care of them too, didn't you not?
Yes,
That must be a big responsibility.
Well, the oldest one, a girl, usually does a lot of it, but I helped because there was 10 of us, and there's 8 younger than me, so well, when I had my first daughter, when Carolyn was born, Mom had a baby that was 4 months older. So they raised up A lot of people thought they were brother and sister,
Yeah.
but
You don't really see that happen a lot these days. I mean,
Mm.
with stuff like that. So at that point, Papa was driving a truck, right? When y'all had
no,
Carolyn.
no, he was working at hosiery mill then.
Okay.
He was working at Virginia Lee Hosiery, and she was 5, I think, when he went to driving the truck.
Okay.
And he was gone a lot. He drove from Blue Ridge transfer, and he drove a few years, and then he decided he was going to quit. He went back to the hosiery mill, went to the old hosiery mill,
Yeah.
and it closed, and so he went back to driving a truck. Went to driving for Hennis Freight Lines.
Okay.
Did he have to go to school for that, or did he just get up
No,
and do it?
not at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he drove tanks during the war.
Mm.
He worked on tanks and
Okay.
during the war, well, it was after the war mostly, Korea and all.
Yeah.
He,
Did your brothers play baseball growing up in any leagues?
well, they played football.
Football?
Hmm 2 of them did, and the rest of them, well, there might have been a third one too. I don't know, but anyway, he got hurt. And during practice, he ran into the goalpost or something. Broke his ribs.
Mm.
So can you tell us a little bit about raising children, what that was like yourself?
Raising children, oh mercy. Well, you just took care of them, and the older ones helped take care of the younger ones. Cause Mom was so busy washing and everything. I helped her. We used to use a scrub, on the board, and we would scrub clothes, and then we didn't get electricity till 46, and when we got it, we got a washing machine. Mom thought she'd gone to heaven. It was so much easier.
Did you have plumbing growing up?
No, we had an outside
Yeah.
toilet. No, we didn't. And so Mom didn't get a bathroom down there until it was in the late 50s. So they just did good to get a bath once a week.
At night, did y'all have like kerosene lamps?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Those are, awful dangerous. You hear about fires starting. Were there fires started often from those lamps? Or?
No, we didn't have any, but I've got one up there now at the far end, the mantle. No, we was back in the hard times.
Yeah.
No, we had plenty of everything, but we didn't realize we was hard up.
Yeah. To kind of swing back around, when you had Carolyn first, you had her first.
Uh-huh.
How long until you had Nanny Gail? Gail?
Yeah, there's 6 years difference.
Okay. 6 years.
Uh-huh.
That's farther than I thought. I thought it was closer together. I thought it was like 18 months.
No, Olin and me were 16 months. But no, there was 6 years difference in them.
Yeah. And did you have them up at Twin County? Did you
Yes,
birth
they
at Twin
both
County?
were born in Twin County.
Yeah.
My last brother and sister, Larry and Nancy, they were the only 2 out of the family that was born at in the hospital.
Yeah.
Mom finally made it to the hospital.
Now, when Nanny Gail was born, I've always heard that Papa wasn't there in the hospital.
No, there was a carnival going on in Galax, and he took my mother and down there, and so they were down at the carnival. The doctors was hunting them, and he was there. We always kidded him about it.
That's funny. So you stayed home at that time and raised children, right?
Oh, yes.
And he was driving a truck later on.
Mm-hmm.
Where was his roots? I remember you saying from here to Detroit, Michigan.
Wow.
Well, he went all over. I think Denver was as far west, and then he went to New York a lot. And he'd finally got a regular run, and it was. It seemed like maybe it was New York. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Did you write to him when he was away, or did you try to call with him?
Did I like it?
No, well, sure. Did you like it?
No.
No.
But I had the kids, and so we was here, and so I helped my parents, and we canned and froze food, and worked in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
How long would he be gone for? I mean, I'm sure he was gone pretty often during that
He would be gone usually about 3 days.
Okay.
He would come home, and then he'd have 8 hours at home from the time he drove out of Winston, Salem, and he would drive, he would come home, take him 2 hours to get home, and he would take a shower and rest, and at the end of the 8 hours, usually they was calling him.
Did that put a strain between y'all two, or was it hard? Was that hard to get through, or did you just work with it?
Well, it was kind of hard. Every time we had an emergency, he was usually gone. The refrigerator would go out or something, and so I'd have to try to get a refrigerator.
Yeah.
And just everything would go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Did you worry about him on the road a lot?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because I've heard some stories from him years ago, talking about stuff that happened. I think Detroit, Michigan. I think something happened up there. I think it was during the riots that they were up there driving. I remember him talking about, but that's what that's what made
it was bad at that time.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Do you remember when President Kennedy was shot?
John F. Kennedy.
President?
Oh, yes, we was watching it.
Mm-hmm.
We had just been to church and got home and had the television on. I was living in the other house, and it was rough. It was rough.
What did you think about it?
I thought it was awful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, it was terrible. And it seemed like anymore it's a common thing. But no, I didn't like it.
Do you recall the moon landing in '69?
Mm-hmm.
That's always something I find very interesting. It's mind-boggling now, even in 2025. I can't imagine in the '60s what it would have been like that moment for the nation. What was it like viewing the moon landing for the first time? Did y'all watch it happen on TV?
Oh yes, we watched everything. We were proud, and I was worried about whether they would make it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But it was bad. But because I was so afraid that they wouldn't live.
Yeah. Looking back, and I'll ask you this later too, but that must have been it must have been major for you then, growing up with no power, with almost no cars, and then just in that short amount of time, people making it to the moon. I mean, that's an incredible, in 30-some years, that transition between that development. I mean, that's incredible. And that's leading me to my next question. Looking back from when you were growing up to the technology that we have now, phones, did it all seem like a drastic transition for you, or did it kind of...
Well, it was, you just couldn't hardly believe it.
Yeah.
Everything would change so, because we had, I went to the one-room school, and all classes 1 through 7 in one room, and I don't know how the teachers did it. I don't know how they did it.
Do you remember your teachers?
Oh yeah, I had the same teacher most of the time. Yeah.
What was their name?
I had Lucille DeHaven, was first one that I had here, and Nettie Martin that lived over the hill. She taught. I had her most of the time, and I had Arlie Webb one time, but for just a year. But the rest of the time, I had the same teacher.
Did you like school?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you ended up graduating from Hillsville High School, right?
Yeah, I graduated at Hillsville at the high school.
Okay. I know the original Hillsville High School burned down, right?
That was years and years ago.
Yeah. Was that while you were there when it burnt?
No,
I think it was
happened
earlier, right?
yes, it was when my mother was a teenager, I think.
Wow. Okay, that's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yes, she went part of the time.
And that kind of loops me around to my next question. You graduated from Hillsville High School, worked at the Virginia Lee sewing.
No, I was the inspector.
Inspector. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you were an inspector there. What was that like? What did that entail?
Looking at hose all day, pulling them on a board.
Was that hard to do? Did it get old? I mean, was it?
Well, it was
monotonous.
Yeah, it was old. And I wasn't good at it, but some of them was.
Yeah. And then you raised children for a while.
Uh-huh.
And then you went back to get another education. You became an LPN and learned how to nurse.
I took it at Carroll County High School.
Really?
What drove you to do that? What did you want to get back into the workforce? Did you want to do something else? What drove
No,
you?
I didn't plan on working. My aunt talked me into one of them. She said, "Why don't you?" She was an LPN. Said, "Why don't you take a course?" And said maybe it might help your family out someday. But I didn't. Then when after I'd finished and I got my degree, she said, "Well, why don't you come to work?" She was working at the training center. So I went. Herbert didn't want me to, but I went. He wanted me to stay home. But anyway, I went over there for 22 and a half years.
And what's neat about that is you worked with my other great-grandma, Nona Faye.
Mm-hmm.
What was she like?
She was a very sweet person.
Yeah.
I worked a different section of the center. It was divided in 3 sections, and she was working on a hill, and I worked at down the cottages.
Yeah.
What did you do as an LPN? What did your job look like?
Give medication and did first aid and worked with a doctor and several different things.
Did you ever have any scary moments you didn't know what to do?
Oh yes, when a boy died on me one night. I was working in the infirmary, and I was pulling a double shift, and some of them said, "Oh, you'll be easy." Said, "Just take care of him." Well, I did, and I didn't think about him dying, but he didn't make it. He ate his supper and doing fine, and was laughing and was jumping up and down on his bed, and he died. And I about died.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yes, because the first person I'd ever been with that passed away.
Yeah. So that was during the 70s. I know you became involved in Relay for Life. So you were a cancer survivor, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that, if that's all right, kind of that experience and how you found out and how you dealt with it? Because during that time, it's still really, really bad today, but it's more treatable today. I'm sure during that time it was a lot scarier. Can you talk about your experience, son?
Yes, it was very scary. I went to the doctor early, and he said that I had a lump in my breast, and he said, "I'm going to call Dr. Meredith at Winston." So he called him, and I went down there, and I lost one breast. And 2 years later then, I lost the other. But Dr. Meredith said, "I've got it all." Said, "You don't have to take any treatments or anything." So I didn't. So that was in '77. And so I worked with Relay for Life a little bit, and that was about it. I just survived.
Yeah.
I thought when they told me that I had cancer that was it, but I made it.
Yeah.
Still here.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Relay for Life used to be a lot bigger,
Oh yeah.
which is sad. I know at Carroll County High School they used to do all night, and I don't think they do that anymore. They do it at Tech, at Virginia Tech. They walk around the drill field, and it's still really big up there. But yeah, that's why I was going to ask you, because that made me think of that the other day. So you worked there for 20 years, and then when did you retire from?
Lord, I can't even think of the year. 2000.
2000. Wow.
2000, and I was glad to go. I was 65 years old that time, and so it was time to quit.
Now, was Papa retired by that point too? Or?
Yes, he was already retired, but he was working. He did work for Spectre Red Ball. He drove for 20-some years, and then they went broke, and so he just retired.
Yeah.
And he worked for the county for 5 years. And he
maintenance, was it maintenance he worked in? Was he a maintenance man for the county?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he worked, so he was, then he retired before I did.
I know that he was very involved in the VFW. Can you talk about that some? Because that seemed to be a very important thing for him.
Well, he was very involved with it for a while, and Lord me, I can't even think.
Are you fine?
But he worked on a funeral detail a long time.
Yeah.
And they would go to all the funerals. Sometimes they would have as many as 3 a day.
Wow.
They'd go to different places.
He was a very tough man, from what I can remember. Even when he was older, a big story about him from when I was growing up. Nobody realized he got ran over by 2 different cars on 2 different occasions. Can you talk about that a little bit? And didn't tell anybody. Now I don't know which one's more impressive, getting hit by 2 cars and making it, or not telling anybody. That's the first thing I would have done, is tell everybody. Can you talk about those instances a little bit? Because I always thought that was a funny story.
Well, he was the first time he got run over. He was at the VFW. They were getting ready for Flag Day. They were putting out flags, and he and another guy were walking, and he wasn't looking, and the guy backed up one of his best friends and hit him, and it was horrible. It broke all the bones in his face, and his glasses were twisted. It was terrible, and I can't remember all the injuries he had, but anyway, they sent him from Galax to Winston, and they worked with him. And then the second time, he was coming down Snake Creek Road, and he saw this guy that was broke down, so he stopped to help him, and that guy said, about 20 people have passed me, and you're the first one that's stopped. And so when Herbert got out of he had a little pickup, he got out of it, and he evidently didn't put it in park or something, and it rolled off and knocked him down, and ran over his legs. He couldn't hardly walk, and he jumped up. He told that boy, said, I'm not hurt. And the boy said he rubbed his legs and he said, I'm okay. And he took that boy home. He lived at Gladesboro, somewhere out there, and got his wife and come back, and anyway they got him straightened up where he'd run over. Where his vehicle had broke down. But Herbert couldn't hardly walk for several days, and it was black and blue, and he wouldn't tell us how it happened. And we asked him if he fell off the house. Did he fall down the steps? No. And he said, I'm not telling you. And after he passed away, the doorbell rang here at the house, and Carolyn went to the door, and there was a guy there she'd never seen before, and she said, am I supposed to know you? And he said, Mr. McGrady helped me. He said he stopped and helped me when I broke down, and and then his pickup ran over him. And Carolyn started laughing. She said, Dad, you thought you wasn't gonna ever tell anybody, but you wasn't able to take it to the grave with you. And my minister was here, and he said, and he said, I know what I'm going to hold in my service, and he told it at the funeral. And the boy said, said he had helped him more than once. And I don't know what else happened, but anyway, and then about 3 or 4 times since then, when the guy was still living out here, he came to the house to see if I needed any help. And he wanted a picture of Herbert. He said said that he had testified in church about Herbert several times. and you know how Herbert was.
Yeah.
Do you remember any music growing up? Do you remember any music growing up?
really
We just listened to the radio, what music we heard on it, and we heard at church was it. No, I never. Now we did too. Charlie Monroe put on a show at Hillsville, and it was going to cost a nickel apiece to get in. So me and my brothers, we picked beans and got our nickels, and we went to see Charlie Monroe.
Now, you also you like Conway Twitty, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did Papa take you to see Conway?
I can't remember. Yeah, we went to see somebody, but I can't remember.
I remember hearing Conway Twitty. I've always liked Conway Twitty, so Mom told me that you liked him. I thought that was interesting.
And so, yeah, but I didn't, we went to, it was at Lakeside. We went down with Clayton and Faye,
Okay.
Herbert's brother and wife, and we went over there. And but anyway, it seemed like it was somebody else besides him. But it was there that night. But we never got to go to many growing up. We didn't have a vehicle, so we didn't have a way to go.
Do you remember buying your first car?
My first one?
Mm-hmm. Your and Papa's first car? What was that?
Well, he bought his first one when he come out of service.
Okay.
He got a Studebaker, and he kept it for a while, and then we've had a lot since then.
When did he get his tractor down here?
I forget what year he bought it, but he bought it and kept it several years. And I came home one day, and he was standing out here, him and one of the men from Gladesboro, standing under a light under the power lines, and the tractor was burning. And I said, "You better get out of there." I said, "You want me to call the fire department?" And he said, "No." But I did, and it burnt to the ground. You remembered it.
Yeah, I have pictures sitting on it. That's why I asked over there, the big red tractor. I think me and him took a picture together, and it's over there. But I remember it burnt down. It was pretty shocking when Mama told me. But he had a lot of things burned down. I think a tank exploded from that.
When he was in service. They almost didn't make it out, evidently.
Yeah. Because I remember him telling me they got out of it and then it exploded, and the cap to it flew hundreds of yards. So you get to retirement in 2000. Did you have any plans for your retirement? What did you do at that point?
Well, wasn't able to do anything. I was too old by then. Because her was 6 years older than I am, and so we just stayed home.
Yeah. I know he was a big reader, and so were you. Y'all read a lot of books.
Oh, yeah.
What did you like to read?
I read everything, and Herbert liked war books.
Yeah.
But he read all the time.
Yeah.
And he gave you all the books.
Yeah. I've read, over the past year, I read some of his John Steinbeck books.
Uh-huh.
And I've been reading through. Me and Ethan likes John Steinbeck. He had a lot of Steinbeck novels, and Fitzgerald. So I've read a lot of those. I've had a little bit, and I'm taking a literature course, and I'll probably read some of his books in college now, which is pretty neat. So I have an American Lit class, so I probably have to take some of those up to Tech. But yeah. So y'all are retired. Did you take any trips? Did you go anywhere at that point? You said you didn't do much, but did you go on a vacation?
We did some. We went to Pennsylvania, and we went to Maryland quite a bit, and then went to Williamsburg. I loved Williamsburg.
Yeah. I did too. It's been years since have you been?
It hasn't been probably 6 years.
Yeah. Williamsburg is very interesting. Very interesting.
But he read everything. He westerns and just whatever he read.
Yeah, I remember pictures of him during the war, reading in the barracks. So I guess that's a lifelong thing, and I hope it is for me and Ethan too. I've heard from different people, from Mama, that she didn't like the beach. What about the beach did you not like?
It's too hot. All that sand.
Can you recall the first time you saw the ocean, saw the beach? How old were you?
It was after I married,
Yeah.
but I can't remember now. But I just never cared for it.
Yeah.
No, I'd find something else I like better.
Yeah. We talked about children. We didn't talk about grandchildren. You had a few grandkids, including me later on. What was that phase of your life like? Seeing the family that you created just kind of bloom out. Now you have a pretty big family.
Just real proud of them.
Yeah.
Just been real proud of them. Yeah. Had 3 granddaughters and 5 great-grandchildren. Yeah, you just never think about it.
So you're 90 years old now.
Oh, yeah.
How does it feel to be 90? People are
never
going to ask you that, but
I never thought I'd live to be 90. I'm just old, and because my hearing's going and my vision, I've got macular degeneration, and I'm fat. I'd had my eyes checked today, and now I can't read, and I love to read.
looking back over the past 90 years, what are you most proud of?
My family. My family.
Is there anything you wished you could have done, but you didn't?
Well, I wished, if I had it to do over, that I had gone into nursing when I got out of high school. I wish I'd done that, but I didn't. But I was too busy canning and helping with kids.
If you were to, let's say, if you could say anything to your family in 50 years, let's say my grandchildren, what would that be? If you could speak to them now, if they're listening to this in 5 decades, what would you like to say?
I don't know, but I would go into the medical field. I would, if I were that good, but I'm not that good enough. Because your other granny, she was good.
Yeah, I'm sure you were good too.
But I don't know. It just things have changed so.
What do you think of the changes, especially more recently?
I think it's bad right now.
Yeah.
I think everything is such a mess. I worry about my family.
Do you wish that your great grandkids, me, my generation, was brought up with the same childhood that you had, or?
Well, I had a good childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't realize it at the time, but we did. because my parents, they had it rough. If I knew I had to raise 10 children.
It's a lot.
Was that ever something that you really wanted to have that big a family, or did you want to have 2 or 3 kids like you?
I didn't want to have 10 children.
You don't hardly see that ever now.
My parents had it rough. Because they had to work real hard.
Looking forward now, let's say Lily or one of your other family members has listened to this in 20, 30 years. What's your hopes for the future?
Oh, I hope they have peace. I hope everything has been such a mess. But I'm just real proud of them.
If someone Luke's and mine's age, maybe 17, 18, 19, is listening to this, what advice would you give them on how to be happy? How to live a happy life?
To have a happy life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really don't know. But just have a lot of good friends, and that's more than anything. I think you enjoy that more than anything.
So we used to ask the same question every time, and we always got a very wide range of unique responses to it. And that question is, what is the meaning of life to you?
To be a good person and to help, people. I think it would be a good life.
Well, Granny, it's been an honor to speak to you this evening. I've enjoyed this more than what you know. So.
Yeah. I'm not good at it.
No.
You're perfectly fine.
Thank you. I appreciate it too.
You're welcome.